You won't sell many ice creams going at that speed,
cried Tom as an ambulance hurtled in the opposite direction. If you think that's a cheesy joke, it's because we stayed in Roquefort, the home of the stinkiest cheese made from sheep's milk, kept in caves for up to 30 months. Man, it ponks, and unfortunately Tom has bought some for his after dinner, before pudding. I've had enough calories with that fish pie that you served, but I need a little mole to wash it down with. We had a misty morning hike up the top of the town. We bought the cheese, but didn't take the tour. I was disappointed there wasn't a petting zoo where we could all have a go at milking those odd-looking naked sheep the cheese is made from. The previous day, whilst walking in the back lanes of Rigor with Mr. and Mrs. Rainbow of Stocklinch, Somerset, we'd seen a flock of those odd-looking beasts, one with a massive hernia or prolapse. The dead sheep on the farm next door are responsible for all the number of flies at the Rainbow Chateau, but the flies were the only tiniest nuisance compared with the hospitality and generosity of the Rainbows. This was my second visit to their country retreat. I met the Rainbow family when we moved to Stocklinch and admired everything about them as I grew up. They played with their children like my parents didn't. They welcomed me into their home, and later I became their babysitter. The absolute ringleader of village life, the Rainbows sit on committees, councils, motivate the village to do up the village hall, ride the pantomime, you name it. All whilst doing up their first village home, then their French residence, and even now at nearly 80, Mr. R tells me he'd like another project. Someone else who had a project was Norman Foster. He was the architect who designed the tallest viaduct in the world, and along with last Saturday's rugger semi-final results, made me proud to be British, finally. A huge gorge needed to be spanned with a massive viaduct, and Norm was the man for the job. We visited his work in Millau and realised a bucket list dream. The visitor centre is crisp, clean and informative. The bridge is impressive, and standing beneath it, even more so. Finally out of the gorges today, the landscape quickly changed to typical Mediterranean wide sweeping fields of vines and olive trees. We headed to a southern peninsula and paid for a campsite for the first time. No more free airs in this part of the land, so we've gone all out and paid €22 a night for electricity and all other necessary facilities. I've done my first load of washing since leaving home, €5. After one afternoon on our bikes, we are sun-kissed. Our retirement Prezi sun chairs have been used for both sitting in and laundry drying. Right now it's time to pour a glass of vino, fire up the MacBook and tether it to our phones using a VPN for the Bake Off final. Question. Why do flamingos stand with one leg on the ground? We treated ourselves to 2 nights in the same place at a proper campsite. We've been told that this part of the world has ponies and flamingos. I couldn't believe that the flamingos were still hanging around at this time of the year, and we were sure we were going to be disappointed. We passed directions to a bird sanctuary, and I thought the last thing I want to see is a flamingo in captivity. The next morning, after generous ablutions, not having to save water for any activity, but being able to use copious amounts, I do appreciate what a luxury running water is. We set off on our bikes. We came out of the campsite and headed towards the coast, crossing a bridge, and with the seashore in sight, we cycled parallel to each other and the coastline. Not only were there ponies galore being ridden, mostly Western style, by a cohort of skilled and unskilled riders, but also in the distance, egrets, great and small. You might remember we got so excited when we spotted one great egret and one small egret in Somerset last month. Well, here they were, in their droves. I now feel sorry for the Somerset loners. This is where the egret action is. I wasn't entirely happy about the animal husbandry. The ponies were all a little bit unkempt, and every time we passed a stable, they certainly hadn't been mucked out by some eager 12-year-old volunteer, which most English stables seem to have. But then we are talking about the country that will happily put horse in a stew or a pie. When it was found that our supermarkets were doing that without telling the public, it was a national scandal, although the scandal was more about gulling the population by misrepresenting the ingredients rather than the actual consumption of horse. Moments later, I shrieked my bike brakes to a stop. 8 flamingos are out on the water, seemingly together in pairs. We stopped to take pictures and video. They're beautiful and very pink. Go to my YouTube channel if you want to see them. Oh wait, you're already here. We turned the corner and there they were, thousands of the things, squawking, barking, cooing, rubbing their necks against each other, flying overhead, nearly knocking our hats off. A heron passed by, mindless of our trajectory. Through the bushes, we saw yet another flock of flamingos. There are storks and herons by the dozen, all in their natural habitat, free to fly off at any point. We, the intruders on well-maintained footpaths across the wetlands. Like unguided missiles, they launch themselves into the air, one at a time, on a flight path to a more plentiful food supply. Looking down for somewhere to land, their legs come forward, stretch straight out, feet at an angle. Then they might assume their less than streamlined shape once more to fly a little further before landing like an amateur parachutist, clumsily gliding along the surface of the water, legs splayed, revealing the black underside of their wings before coming to a halt. The next projectile flapping and running along the surface before finally taking flight. Suddenly, around the corner, snuffling, Coypu, looking like a large beaver or rat, its long tail held straight behind, off the floor, wet and bedraggled, more terrified of us than we of it. The flamingos kept us entertained for hours, and when we had cycled home an evening duck stew for tea, had I known I was visiting a bird sanctuary that day, I probably would have planned a meatless dish. We went out for a walk after dinner and headed down to the coast again, and there they all were, feeding in the dust. The answer, of course, because if they took the other leg off the ground, they would fall over.